How many times have you stood before a door, ticket in hand, yet still been doubted, judged by a mere glance? How many times have you felt compelled to prove your worth? Not because of any deficiency, but simply because of your difference. That was the moment Jasmine Crockett, a congresswoman, faced at an airplane gate, a small but weighty moment that sparked a nationwide confrontation. This story isn't just about a denied seat. It's the voice of millions who are too familiar with being misjudged. All Jasmine Crockett wanted was to get home. Instead, she was humiliated at the gate until she pulled out her phone, hit record, and flipped the script on everyone watching. Jasmine Crockett didn't travel light, at least not this time. Between committee meetings, late-night policy calls, and public appearances, her week in Washington had drained every ounce of energy she had. She wasn't just tired, she was worn down. So, when she stepped into Dallas Love Field Airport on that Friday afternoon, all she looked forward to was a bit of peace, a warm seat, a glass of ginger ale, noise-canceling headphones, and maybe even a nap. Nothing fancy, just the comfort she'd earned. Her flight back to El Paso was running on time. She was dressed in a sharp navy blue pantsuit, flats instead of heels. She didn't care about appearances today. Her hair was pulled back into a simple low bun. No makeup, just her, ready to go home. At gate 18, she approached the boarding area, as they called first class. She pulled out her boarding pass, held her phone in her other hand, and walked up to the podium where a gate agent, mid-40s, buzz-cut, stiff posture, was scanning passengers in. Before Jasmine could even extend her pass, he glanced up, gave her a quick once-over, and said flatly, "First class is boarding right now. Priority passengers only." She blinked, not out of shock, but confusion. "Yes, that's me," she replied with a small, polite smile. She extended her boarding pass, seat 2A. The man didn't even take it from her. He looked again, this time with a squint, like he was trying to decide if she was joking. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but firm, "I think you might be at the wrong gate." "No, I'm not," Jasmine replied, her voice still calm. "I double-checked. El Paso, 4:25 de la tarde, gate 18. He stared, silent for a few seconds, then he waved vaguely behind her. "You might want to check with customer service. You're probably on standby." Standby? She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, not because she believed him, but because she knew exactly what this was. Still, she wasn't going to react, not yet. She held out her phone, showing the mobile boarding pass, her name, her seat, her ticket class. "This isn't standby," she said. "It's confirmed first class." He didn't even glance at the screen, just raised an eyebrow like she was wasting his time. "I think you're mistaken," he repeated. "That section's for priority guests." Now, the people behind her were starting to murmur. A woman a few rows back leaned slightly to the side, trying to get a better view. A teenager in a hoodie pulled out his phone, pretending to scroll, but recording. Jasmine noticed. She always noticed. Her smile faded. She took a breath, then asked, still calm, "Can I speak with a supervisor, please?" That's when his tone changed. He shifted his weight, looked past her, and said, "Ma'am, I don't have time for this right now. Please step aside." And just like that, the tension in the air started thickening. It wasn't dramatic, not loud. It was that quiet kind of silence that fills space when something's wrong, and everyone knows it, but no one moves. The woman behind her, middle-aged, curly auburn hair, coach tote, nudged forward and whispered, "I think she's in first class. Let her board." The agent ignored it. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She stepped to the side and pulled out her phone. If they were going to treat her like she didn't belong, they were going to do it on camera. But before she hit record, she looked down at her pass one last time. Her name, her seat, her class. It was all there. Still, somehow, that man had looked her in the face and decided she couldn't possibly be who she said she was. And the worst part? It wasn't even surprising. But what he didn't realize was that Jasmine wasn't just any passenger, and this moment wasn't going to disappear quietly. The agent had already turned his attention to the next passenger, acting like the exchange hadn't even happened. But Jasmine didn't move. She stood just off to the side, still holding her phone, not recording yet, just watching. She wasn't unfamiliar with being dismissed. Politics had taught her that. But this was different. This wasn't about policy or power. It was about someone looking her dead in the face and deciding she didn't belong, not because of anything she did, but because of what she looked like. Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was DeAndre, her aide. "Flight on time? You need me to call ahead for pickup?" She didn't respond. Not yet. The passengers behind her had boarded quickly, too quickly. No one else was being questioned. No one else was told to check with customer service. No one else had their ticket ignored. She took a few steps toward the counter again, keeping her voice even. "Excuse me, I'm not moving until I speak to someone in charge." The agent didn't look at her. "Ma'am, I've already told you." "Then tell me again," she said, "because I want to make sure I understand what's happening. Are you saying my ticket is invalid?" A younger woman now stood behind the counter next to the agent, maybe a trainee or another employee. She looked uncomfortable, glancing between Jasmine and her colleague. Jasmine made eye contact with her. "Can you look at this?" she asked, handing over the boarding pass. The younger woman hesitated, reached for it, but the man stepped in. "We've got it," he said sharply, pushing the scanner toward another boarding passenger. The trainee stepped back like she'd been burned. Jasmine wasn't angry. Not yet, but something in her started to tighten. Not rage, not even frustration, just that low, tired burn of having to prove again what should have been clear from the start. The man finally turned toward her, now irritated. "Ma'am, I need to get these people on the plane. If you're causing a disturbance, I can call security." That's when the murmurs turned into voices. "She's not causing anything," said a man nearby, late 50s, beard, wearing University of Texas cap. "She's asking a question." Another woman chimed in. "Just scan her ticket." "What's the issue?" A college student in joggers raised his phone a little higher. "She's got a first-class ticket, dude. Just let her board." But the agent doubled down. "Please step away from the gate, or I will involve security. Last warning." Now, Jasmine pressed record. Her voice came out steady, her face framed perfectly in the corner of the screen. "This is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. I am at Dallas Love Field, Gate 18, with a confirmed first-class ticket to El Paso. The gate agent has refused to scan my boarding pass, denied my request to speak with a supervisor, and is now threatening to call security on me for trying to board the seat I paid for." The phone caught the man stiffening. She kept going. "This isn't just about a seat. It's about accountability. I'm tired. I've been working nonstop for this country all week, and now I'm being told that I must be confused, that someone like me couldn't possibly belong in seat 2A. Someone behind her said, "Get him, Congresswoman." A few claps followed. The younger employee behind the desk leaned toward the agent and whispered something. He shook his head, jaw tight, and waved her off. Then, almost on cue, a TSA officer walked over. He didn't say anything, just stood a few feet away, arms crossed, observing. Jasmine turned her camera toward him. "Would you like to weigh in? Do you see what's happening here?" The officer blinked, clearly unsure what to say. I think this is a matter for the airline, ma'am." "Exactly," she said, "and the airline has refused to acknowledge a valid ticket." Passengers were no longer quietly watching. They were participating. Someone said, "This is ridiculous." Another muttered, "If she was wearing a suit and tie, she'd be sitting on the plane by now." Jasmine lowered the phone. "You know," she said, looking directly at the agent, "you had a chance to fix this before it became a moment, but you made a choice." But he still didn't realize that this moment had already outgrown this gate, and soon it wouldn't be about him at all. Once the video started rolling, everything changed, but only for those paying attention. Jasmine wasn't performing. She didn't raise her voice, didn't point fingers, didn't turn it into a spectacle. Her tone was firm, her words deliberate, and that made the clip even harder to look away from. She held her phone at chest level, just enough to capture herself and the gate. "This is the third time I've been told to step aside," she said, even with a valid first-class ticket in my hand. "I've asked twice to speak to a supervisor. I've been ignored, redirected, and threatened with security." The comments from other passengers started stacking behind her like waves. One woman to the left, with 2 carry-ons and a straw hat, said clearly, "If it were me, I'd be on that plane already." A younger black man whispered to someone beside him, "I've seen this kind of thing before. Bro, same thing happened to my cousin." First class still didn't matter. The airline employee didn't seem to know what to do now. His hand hovered over the scanner like it was suddenly too complicated to use. His face had gone pale. He looked around as if hoping someone from management would swoop in and take the heat off, but there was no backup. There was only silence and dozens of watching eyes. Then, Jasmine asked the question that sealed it all. "Can you tell me what part of my ticket isn't valid?" Out loud. Right now. He didn't answer. Not even a breath. That was the moment the video hit a nerve, not just with the people in that terminal, but eventually with thousands who'd watch it on their phones, their TVs, even in classrooms and offices. The gate agent finally motioned to the younger employee, his voice barely audible. Just let her through." Jasmine didn't move. "No," she said, voice cool. "That's not how this ends. You're not going to quietly scan me in after refusing to acknowledge me for 10 minutes. I want your supervisor." Still, passengers began nodding. A few clapped again. One person called out, "She's right." Finally, a woman in a gray blazer approached from the side corridor, clearly upper management, clipboard, headset, the kind of authority Jasmine had asked for from the start. She walked up to the counter, looked at Jasmine, and then looked at the phone still recording. "I am Kimberly. I'm a shift manager," she said. "Can I help with something?" Jasmine tilted her phone just slightly, so Kimberly's face was visible in the frame. "Yes, I'd like you to explain to me why your gate agent denied boarding to a ticketed first-class passenger, refused to scan the pass, refused to call a supervisor, and only changed his tune once a camera was rolling." Kimberly swallowed. I wasn't aware of any of that. Let me take a look." She took the phone from Jasmine, scanned the barcode, paused. "You're booked in 2A. Everything looks fine," she said. "Of course it does," Jasmine said. She took a step back, lowering her phone just slightly. "You can go ahead and board me now, but I want his name and yours." Kimberly blinked, caught between policy and damage control. "Of course, I can provide that." Jasmine turned the camera back on herself. "This is the part where you think the story ends, but I'm not walking onto that plane quietly because the issue isn't just me. It's how easily this could have been anyone." The gate agent, still silent, stepped away from the scanner. Passengers were whispering more now, some of them pulling Jasmine aside, thanking her, shaking her hand. Then came the part no one saw coming. A flight attendant appeared at the gate door and whispered something to Kimberly. Her face changed. She stepped aside, motioned Jasmine to come forward. "Congresswoman Crockett," she said carefully, "it appears the captain has asked for you to be seated and settled before continuing boarding. Please come with me." Not a word from the agent. He looked away as Jasmine walked through the gate, escorted by the flight attendant, phone still recording. The crowd behind her broke into soft applause, not for a drama, not for spectacle, but for someone who hadn't backed down when she was asked politely to disappear. But once she took her seat and turned off the camera, what happened next wouldn't just be on video. It would explode across every screen in the country. Jasmine Crockett settled into her seat, leaned her head back, and exhaled. She wasn't angry, not in the way people expected. She was exhausted. There's a different kind of tired that comes from being publicly dismissed while holding proof in your hand. It wasn't the first time she'd faced it, but this time, people saw it before she even buckled her seatbelt. Her phone buzzed again. 12 missed messages, 14 mentions on Twitter, 3 new voicemails. She tapped on the group chat labeled Team J, her press team, her scheduler, her chief of staff. They had already seen the video, and they weren't waiting. It's spreading already. 200K views on the clip. Twitter's blowing up. "We need a response draft stat." Jasmine didn't want to draft anything just yet. She needed time to process what had just happened. But the internet doesn't run on patience, and neither does public outrage. A college student in 16 leaned across the aisle. "Miss Crockett, that was wild. What just happened? I got the whole thing from where I was sitting. You want me to send it?" Jasmine gave a polite nod. "Send it to my aide. His name's DeAndre." She slid him a business card. "Thank you for offering. That means a lot." He handed back the card. It shouldn't have to happen at all. As the plane pushed back from the gate, she looked out the window. Just 20 minutes earlier, she was being told to check with customer service. Now she was trending nationally under hashtag C2A. Back in the airport terminal, someone had already uploaded a close-up clip of the moment she asked, Can you tell me what part of my ticket isn't valid? Paired with a still shot of the agent's blank stare. It became the thumbnail of the weekend. Within hours, it was reposted by advocacy accounts, journalists, and celebrities alike. One prominent news anchor commented, "This isn't just about a flight. This is about what people are assumed to be based on how they walk, talk, or dress." Another added, "Jasmine Crockett kept calm, made her point, and let the world watch. That's leadership." And then, quietly, something else happened. Other people began sharing their experiences. A black woman in Phoenix posted a video from 2 months ago where she was pulled aside in security for a random search despite having pre-check. A Navy veteran posted about being downgraded from first class in Austin due to overbooking, while the man seated next to him, who had booked after, was allowed to stay. A Latina businesswoman in Seattle commented, "This exact same thing happened to me in 2021. Only difference? I didn't hit record." The comments kept coming, stories stacked on stories. What started as a single incident became a collective recognition. Jasmine's quiet moment had turned into a microphone. By the time her plane landed, she had 2 voicemails from producers at CNN and MSNBC. A few local Texas news stations wanted interviews. Even The View had reached out, but she hadn't even responded yet. DeAndre met her at the gate, holding her favorite cold brew and looking wired. "They're scrambling," he said. "I just got a call from the airline's regional PR director. They said a statement is coming." "A statement?" Jasmine repeated. "About what?" "They wouldn't say. Just that they're reviewing protocols and that they take all complaints seriously." She almost laughed. "You know what that means, right?" "Yep," DeAndre said. "They're in panic mode." He opened the car door for her. "We're meeting with the communications team in an hour. You want time to think before we drop a response?" Jasmine stared out the window as they pulled away from the terminal. The video was no longer hers. It belonged to everyone who saw something familiar in it. Everyone who had been told, directly or indirectly, that they didn't belong, even when the proof said otherwise. But she hadn't even spoken yet, and when she did, it wouldn't be to defend herself. It would be to ask a bigger question. By the next morning, Jasmine's name was in every headline from Fort Worth to Fresno. The airline, Crescent Skyways, posted a tweet just before sunrise. "Short, cold, forgettable. We are aware of the incident involving Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett at one of our boarding gates. We take all reports seriously and are conducting an internal review. We apologize for any inconvenience." Inconvenience. Jasmine read the message aloud in her living room, half amused, half annoyed. Her phone lit up again, this time from her friend Alina, a state rep out of Oklahoma. "Alina, girl, they really thought that PR ghost of a statement was going to fly. You better not let them walk away from this." Jasmine, already working on something, replied, "I'm not letting it go quiet." "Good," Elena said, "because I've got 3 friends who've flown Crescent and had the exact same thing happen. Different cities, same nonsense." Jasmine leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. It would have been easier to let it fade. She could have accepted the so-called apology, posted a polite response, and moved on. But something about it, the blankness of it, the routine wording, the refusal to name what really happened, rubbed her raw. So, instead of letting it slide, she opened her laptop and began typing. "Yesterday, I experienced something I wish I could say was unique. It wasn't. It was a reflection of what far too many people deal with, quiet, daily dismissals of who they are, what they've earned, and where they belong." She hit post and walked away from the keyboard. Within minutes, her words were everywhere. That's when the floodgates opened. A former Crescent flight attendant shared anonymously. "There's a known pattern at certain hubs. They profile who looks like a first-class flyer. The rest get extra scrutiny, even if their tickets are valid." A man in Ohio commented under the post, "I've been stopped 3 times at boarding. The only thing consistent? I wasn't wearing a suit." A retired teacher shared, "Once, the gate agent double-checked my ID because she said I didn't seem like a retired Delta Platinum member. I didn't know there was a look for that." Even people who had never flown Crescent joined the conversation because it wasn't just about airlines anymore. It was about everyday judgments, the way some people are asked to prove themselves twice while others glide through unquestioned. Later that afternoon, A news anchor on national television read Jasmine's statement aloud and closed with, "This is no longer about one person's boarding pass. This is about how assumptions still shape access and who we trust to belong in certain spaces." The pressure on Crescent built quickly. Stock dipped by 3.5%. Travel bloggers and influencers started tagging competitor airlines. Hashtags like hashtag first class means all and hashtag I check your bias trended across platforms. But Jasmine wasn't chasing chaos. She wanted clarity. In a sit-down interview that aired 2 days later, she spoke plainly. "I didn't go to the airport looking for a fight," she said. "I just wanted to get home." But when people in uniform, with authority, look at you and decide you must be mistaken again and again, it adds up. This wasn't about me wanting special treatment. It was about not wanting to be treated as less. The interviewer nodded. "So, what do you want to happen now?" Jasmine took a breath. "I want this airline and others like it to ask real questions. Who do they train their staff to expect in first class? Who gets double-checked and who doesn't? Who gets the benefit of the doubt and who has to explain themselves every time?" Crescent Skyways released a second statement the following morning. This one was longer, more apologetic. They acknowledged the agent's conduct, promised a full internal review, and announced plans to implement bias awareness training across all major airports by year's end. Still, Jasmine didn't applaud them, not publicly, because it shouldn't take a viral video, a trending hashtag, and media pressure to make companies value fairness. But now the world was watching, and Jasmine knew this story had the power to change more than just one airline's policy manual. The following week, Crescent Skyways issued its third public statement. This time, they didn't bury the lead. "We sincerely apologize to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and to all customers who have experienced unfair treatment while flying with us. Moving forward, Crescent will launch a nationwide initiative focused on accountability, representation, and bias awareness within our customer service departments, with full implementation across all hubs by March of next year." It was the closest thing to ownership they'd offered since the beginning. Jasmine read the message on her phone, sitting alone at a coffee shop in Las Cruces. She hadn't planned to be back in New Mexico so soon, but the request for speaking engagements, community forums, and meetings had exploded. What started with a denied boarding pass had turned into something far bigger, and she hadn't even finished telling the story yet. She opened her notes app and scrolled through the messages she'd saved, some from strangers, some from staff. A few were written on napkins, handed to her in airports by travelers who'd quietly said, "Thank you for saying something." One message from a woman in Tucson stood out. "I've been flying for 20 years, and every single time, I get nervous when I approach the counter. Not because I've done anything wrong, but because I know there's a chance someone will question if I belong in the line I'm standing in. When I saw your video, I cried, not because I was shocked, but because for once, someone didn't just walk away." Jasmine sipped her coffee and stared out the window. People had asked her why she didn't just ignore it, why she didn't board the plane quietly and deal with it later. Her answer never changed. You can't expect change in silence. She didn't set out to start a movement. She wasn't looking for headlines or attention. But when the moment showed up, she chose to face it head on, and what she got in return was a tidal wave of stories from people who had stayed quiet for too long. Some had been brushed aside in boardrooms, others second-guessed in hotel lobbies, and many, far too many, had learned to smile through it, to not cause a scene, to make excuses for people who didn't see them as they were. That's what this whole story was about. Not just bias, not just assumptions, but the cost of constantly having to explain yourself in places you've already earned your place in. Jasmine wasn't trying to shame the airline into submission. She was asking a bigger question. How many others have been treated this way, without a platform, without a title, without a phone camera rolling? And more importantly, what happens when those people finally speak? 3 weeks after the incident, Crescent launched a public video campaign featuring testimonials from passengers and employees, highlighting how the company planned to do better. Jasmine wasn't in any of the clips. She hadn't asked to be. But her influence was all over it. At a town hall later that month, she said something that stayed with the audience long after the cameras turned off. Your dignity shouldn't depend on your seat number. A woman in the back stood up and clapped, then another, then the room. DeAndre caught her eye from across the stage and gave her a subtle nod. They both knew this moment wasn't about her anymore. It was about everyone watching. And if they learned one thing from Jasmine's story, it was this: being calm doesn't mean being silent. Asking for fairness isn't aggression. And sometimes the smallest refusal to step aside, to let it go, to be quiet, can force the biggest institutions to reckon with the truth. Jasmine packed up her notes and headed toward the exit. Outside, a group of students waited with notebooks and phones, eager to ask questions. She smiled. She'd missed her flight home that day, but she never missed the point. If the story meant something to you, if it made you think twice about how we treat people, how we judge, how we ignore, don't let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, because change doesn't start at the top. It starts when we stop letting quiet wrongs go unchecked. Lesson learned. Jasmine Crockett's story is not just about a confrontation at an airport, but a powerful reminder of the strength of individual voice. It proves that silence is not an option when facing injustice. Sometimes a small act, a timely word, can spark a wave of change, not just for oneself, but for the entire community. We learn that dignity cannot be taken away by anyone, and fairness should not be a privilege, but a right for everyone. Remember, each of us has the ability to make a difference by refusing to be silent and daring to speak up for what is right.